Hello, hello, hello.
Sorry.
You seem to be the only one that's joined us so far.
Oh, okay.
We'll give them a few.
Where is she? Oh,
Hi,
here you go.
All right. Doggy up. Okay. What are you doing? Are you getting off or are you coming on? What are you doing? Okay. Gary?
Oh. So my husband has forgot to get home on time again. So if I run off, it's because my children are murdering each other in the next room.
All right. No worries. It's all going to be a little bit intimate if it's just you and me.
Yeah. Here, Georgie. Come in.
Dodo was just trying to see where the dog noises were coming from.
Oh. George.
And then he gave up because he couldn't see anybody. You come in here. Come here, look. There'll be a doggy on.
No.
Yeah. Here, look. Let's see if you can see it. See.
Where's this? Come in. Here, what's this?
Kisses. I don't want kisses. You can't see it. We just get snobby and you can't see it.
Is he looking? Can't get it low enough.
Oh, don't worry. He's giving up now. All right. So this week, I'm trying to figure out my camera angle. I'm not doing very well. The other way. This week, the aim is to speak about leads. I was just also, I'm checking, the reason I keep looking at my computer is I'm just checking to see if there's anybody else's messaged us.
Yeah.
So I do keep looking over there, and I'm just going to have another look at WhatsApp. I've just put a message up. So Nikki's just trying to get in and she can't get in.
Oh, right.
All right. So hopefully she'll catch up.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on. We've got a beep beep. It's good. Looks like we might be on. You made it. Yeah. Okay. Mute you, Claire. Muted. All right. So can you hear me okay? First of all, just do a sound check. And I know that my computer, the internet, has been playing up a little bit the last few days. So I apologize if I suddenly stop moving or stop talking or whatever. You know, nothing I can do about it really. But if I am really breaking up or it's getting really difficult, just get my attention, and we can always convert to a WhatsApp chat if necessary. So yeah, it does throw me off a bit when the internet's playing up. I do get a little bit stressy about it, but you know, such is life. So having said that, a lovely photo of Georgie. Was it Georgie trying to get onto the food cabinets to get the, yeah, fantastic. All right, so let's ask for an update from you.
Yeah, so on Saturday, she actually managed to get on the side and pinch a whole turkey off the side and ran away with it. So she had a nice feast on Saturday. And then today, like probably about 10 minutes ago, I've just gone back in the kitchen and she was actually on the kitchen side. So she's got up there. She's done it. It's her Everest, the kitchen side. So yeah, so we need to battle that.
Okay, grand, I'll have a think about that. And Nikki, how are you getting on?
Yeah, no, we're doing pretty good. Not doing very well with the downs. I just think she really struggles with the whole positioning of it. I think it's more her than, I think she sort of mentally she knows, but I just don't think she enjoys doing it. So we've done a lot more on the sit. So we've got sort of outside more, so from a distance, and it seems to be turning into almost our go-to, because if she runs off with a bit of wood chip, you know, trying to drop or whatever, she's really not aware of. But if I say sit, she instantly sits now, and then it gives me the chance then to get her to come for a treat and then wrestle the wood chip. So it's kind of working. But yeah, she's Autumn, come on, let's go to school. We've got school.
All right, thank you. All right. So yeah, I mean, God, puppies, nightmare. Did you see that post that I shared about the fact that it is perfectly normal to sometimes hate your puppy? You know, that they're designed to test the world. You know, they need to know what works, and you know, if there's going to be something good on the work surface, then you want to figure out how to get up there and get it. And what you've got there with Georgie, obviously, is a highly intelligent dog who's got this ability to put two and two together and figure out a plan of how to take action. And the trouble with living with really bright dogs, and you've both got working breed dogs, the trouble with living with the bright dog is that you have to think ahead. You have to think, what could go wrong, and how can I set up the situation so that the dog's less likely to find out those things I don't want them to know about. You know, if you don't want them learning how fantastic, you know, counter surfing is, then unfortunately for the first few months of their life, you do have to be hyper tidy. You know, you do have to, don't leave a room before you've looked behind you and thought, what, you know, what's there? If I was a puppy, what would be there that I would try and get to? You know, and I think the microwave and the oven are your godsends, because most dogs can't or don't figure out how, there are dogs that can figure out how to open microwaves, but most dogs don't figure it out. So, you know, stuffing things into the microwave, into an oven, something with a clip on it. So child clips for dogs who are very handy with cupboards, for example. but you need to be getting ahead of them with it, because once your pup has managed to figure out that they can access that resource, that thing that's so amazing to them, once they've figured it out, they're going to return to that behavior, you know, because that makes sense, doesn't it? You know, it makes sense once you know it's there. Anyway, but today is going to be all about leads and walking on a lead. And, you know, I think one of the hardest things to teach a dog actually is walking on the lead. And I think the actual teaching of it, whenever I teach it, especially if I'm doing one-to-one training with people, they'll come in with a dog who absolutely pulls on the lead. As soon as you attach a lead, the dog is pulling like a train. And usually within 20 minutes, the dog's walking happily next to them. And they want to know, well, I've done all these things and these other trainers have told me all these things. Why is this working? Well, I don't want my puppy owners having to go through that. I want my puppy owners knowing the secret right at the beginning and getting it right from the beginning. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about equipment. So hopefully this is going to work. I've organised myself in theory so that I've got some photos to show to you and to put on your video clip and to talk about. This might all go wrong if I've forgotten how to do it properly. So what should happen is you should be able to see a screen which has got you still on it. We'll get rid of that. And a picture of maybe. Okay, and here we've got photos of equipment. Can everybody see that all right? If you give me a thumbs up so that, is it big enough for you to see it possibly? You can manage, okay. So, things to talk about then. First of all, this beastie. This is a treat pouch. I think one of the things that tends to happen too quickly when you're training young dogs is you will start to get rid of carrying food with you. You'll not have it to hand. And one of the reasons that people tend not to have it to hand is because they get irritated with having pockets full of smelly dog treats, you know, and remembering to reload yourself before you go out with your dog is just another little niggle that you have to think about before you can get on with your life, before you can get on with your dog walk. So I think that having a treat pouch, I don't go anywhere with my dogs unless I've got my treat pouch with me. And because it's generally got something in it from before, sometimes unfortunately not the nicest of results, but you know, this is why I have two in case I've forgotten and I've got to wash one. But usually it's ready, it's prepared, it's got my poo bags in it, so I don't have to have a panic attack that I haven't got poo bags, and it's a place where I can keep other things that I might need with the dog. So if I'm using a clicker, for example, there's a slot for the clicker. So I would strongly advise anybody that's training a puppy, or even any dog really, is to have an equipment bag that is constantly with you wherever you're going, whatever you're doing. So that's one. This is my particular favorite design, which is why I've taken a photo of that. The next thing is, you'll notice that I haven't put a picture of a collar up. Well, you do have to have a collar on your dog. You do legally have to have a collar. And the reason for that is that they have to wear an ID tag. They have to be identified. Even if they've got an identity chip, they still have to wear an ID tag. But I think it's not a good idea to walk puppies with a collar for lots and lots of reasons. The main reason, I think, is that for me, the idea of somebody who's growing and developing, pulling into quite sensitive tissues in the neck, I believe that there's going to potentially be all sorts of risk of damage, especially with the bigger breeds. You know, I used to work in orthopedic practice in Birmingham, and we saw a lot of neck injuries, you know, a lot of slipped discs in necks, especially with the taller breeds. And, you know, I don't want something around my dog's neck when I'm walking it, but I do want a collar on there for emergency grabs, you know, if they haven't got the harness on for whatever reason, but also for ID tags. So then you've got the subject of harnesses and harness shapes, which is down here. And there are harnesses out there that I would strongly recommend you not use, especially for a puppy, but for any dog. And those are this shape, where the bar part goes across the front of the chest. And what happens there is that it interferes with the movement of the shoulder. On Little Tikes, if you trawl a little bit, there is a video showing the difference in, they've got the same dog, just wearing different equipment. So the same dog walking on a lead and how it holds its neck and shoulders as a result of the lead. A dog walking on the kind of harness that I prefer, and a dog walking on this style of harness. And you can see, particularly on the video with this style of harness, the dog doesn't take normal length strides. It takes short strides because the front of the shoulder is being prevented from moving freely. So the styles that I would prefer for your puppies are either this full chest style, which allows full movement of the forelegs because it's not impinging, so it's kind of got a H shape, I guess, if you like. My downside with this particular style is that it does tend to pull up into the throat again. When the puppy pulls, it does tend to pull into the throat. So this is my favorite, and this is what my dogs wear. This is perfect fit, and you can see that it is, I haven't got both pictures of it, but it sits across the front of the chest this way, the same as this one does. And if they pull into it, the pressure from that pull goes through the bone on the front of the chest. It doesn't go into the neck, so it doesn't rise up. The other benefit of this particular style, you can see that it's got two connections to the dogs. There's one at the front of the chest, there's a loop there, and there's one on the back. And in combination with this, which is a double-ended lead, you can then help to guide the dog's movements much more smoothly without having to pull or tug them around. Now then, one big problem with harnesses and puppies is getting the size right. You know, it's a nightmare. You can find yourself going through several different sizes before you find the one that you want. And there is a significant risk, especially with puppies, that they will go backwards and they will pull the harness over the top of their heads. So I like to use a connector clip between the harness and the collar. That means that then, if the harness does pull off over the top of the head, you're still attached to the dog via the collar. Okay, now it doesn't have to be anything fancy. You can buy them really cheap. I tend to make my own and find some old dog leads, and I cut the clips off, and I, you know, just make a band that's the right size for whichever dog I'm attaching. And especially when I've got a puppy, I like them to wear one of those. I'm going to have a quick word about this beastie. There are some reasons why you would want to use a flexi, but very, very few. The only reason I would ever use a flexi is if I've got an older dog who's going blind and deaf, and I still want them to be able to feel free in the countryside. Yeah, and when I'm using that, I don't hold it. I fasten the handle to myself via the belt part of my treat pouch. So there's no risk of it pulling out of my hand. With these, if you want to look them up, you will find a lot of horror stories about them just causing all sorts of nasty accidents to people and to dogs. So we strongly advise against flexis. We do use normal leads. We want the lead to be long, quite a long lead. So we're going to have a look at that with my dogs just now. Okay, so I'm going to let you ask questions to me about any of those. Anybody got anything they wanted to say or argue with, or, you know, if you disagree, please do tell me, because, you know, I do try and keep up to shift with everybody. Okay, So we'll get rid of that and put you back on there. Right then, so when I'm putting a lead on my dogs, I'm just about to break all my rules because I was going to go downstairs and then I had problems connecting to the internet. I was going to go downstairs and get my harness out of the car because they always wear harnesses and therefore the harnesses are always in the car. And I've forgotten. So I'm going to be demoing on a collar, which goes against everything that I've just said. So please don't pick me up on it or, you know, laugh. So we need a dog. There's a dog, one dog volunteer. And what you will see with both Dodo and Twiggy is they are wearing one of these, which is a martingale colour. And the reason they wear martingales is because the bottom part of their neck is a lot thicker than the top part of their neck. And if I put a normal collar on them, they are either really uncomfortable because the collar's trying to sit down lower on the neck, or it's too loose and it will just slip off over their head. So if you do decide that you need a martingale, what you need to make sure is when it's fastened tight, when it's pulled all the way up, this is still loose on the neck. It doesn't apply any choking tension. That way up. Right, so come here so they can see. So with Twiggy, come here on camera, thank you. With Twiggy, you can see, even if I pull it all the way up, I can still get my hand all the way through. Does that make sense? So you can imagine with her, when it's all the way down here, it's nice and comfy and she can relax. And if it were a normal collar, it would just come straight over her head. Good girl, you can go lay down. Here's a Dodo. Twiggy, go lay down. Thank you. Here's a Dodo. He's got the same thing going on. There's his baby's in the background, so she's making it hard to see because she's black. But same idea, martingale style, onto which I wouldn't normally clip a lead. But in emergencies, if you're just transferring them from one place to another, it's nice to have that lead there. Okay, so can I get rid of some of you lot? Because there's lots of dogs here. Can you go out? Go on. No, that's Kiki. Twiggy, go out. Yeah. Good girlie. Okay, so here's Dodo on a lead. And what I want you to think about here with your lead, if your lead is too short when you're standing, so if you've got a short lead, so imagine that it was sort of that length. Now the dog doesn't get to choose whether or not to be close to me. And when we take that choice away from them, they're more likely to try and get away from us. What we want is a lead that's long enough so that the dog can move away from us, but choose to come close to us. Okay, now that sounds a bit like it's a bit backwards. But the reason is, if you are forcing the dog to stay, so if you're using your lead to make them stay close to you, what you're doing is you're actually causing them to want to pull away. It's called the opposition reflex. Your body wants to get back to a comfortable, safe position, a comfortable feeling. And having a tight lead is an uncomfortable feeling. Did you see his face just change slightly? Yeah? Having a loose lead, now he says, oh yeah, I'll hang out with you, and his face goes all relaxed. Yeah? And we can pay him. Every time he chooses to be close to us, we can pay him. The lead, legally, you have to wear one anyway when you're out in public, but the lead is also a safety net. It's not for teaching your dog how to be with you. It's not for forcing them to stay next to you. It's a safety net so that your dog can't go and get into trouble. So, let's move back. You stay there. You're in your way. Stay there. Okay. So if he suddenly saw something over there, you're supposed to run over there. Go on over there. Go and get it. Then the safety net comes into play and stops him from getting into trouble. Go and get it. But when he's with me, I want it to be a very relaxed lead. I want this nice, loose slope between us, this smile between us. Yeah? Now I tend to hold my lead naturally towards my body, like this. Yeah? When I'm moving, when I'm walking, this is where my hands are. That's fine and that's good, and I like being like that, but sometimes you forget, don't you? Sometimes you're just wandering and you're doing this. Yeah, and that's fine as well, but I want the dog to be able to tell when you want them to pay attention and when they're all right to kind of pull and sniff. So when I'm letting my dogs pull and sniff, I extend my arm, I let them wander, I let them do whatever they want to do. The only rule that I have is if that lead goes really tight and it's starting to make me become unbalanced, then I'm not going to move my legs. My legs stop working. I will not move forward if the lead goes tight. I'm not going to get angry or upset. I'm not going to start worrying and stressing out about it. I'm just going to go, oh, broken human. And very quickly, puppies will figure out if they want to go to the next sniff, to the next thing to investigate, they have to take the human with them. And especially then if the human is also saying, ooh, I love it when you're right next to me. Yeah, when you're right next to me and we're moving together, I might give you a treat. If you can keep track of me, I might give you a treat. So actually, as much as we've just spent quite a lot of time talking about equipment, teaching your dog to walk nicely on the lead is done without a lead. It's about getting that connection between the two of you. So we're going to play some little connection games to get the dog to start thinking that looking at you and following you is a really, really good idea. So all we're going to do, little game I've just learned from Kay Atwood, we're going to play what we call the counting game. So the counting game goes like this. We say 1 and put a piece of food right at your feet. Wait till the dog looks up. Say 2 and put a piece of food right next to your feet. And then you're going to go 3 and get excited on that third one. You're not going anywhere. Your feet aren't going anywhere. But we're waiting for the dog to look back to us before we say our next number and put the next piece of food down. Okay, so he's looking and I say 1. 2. 3. And the 3 has a little bit of excitement about it. We're changing our voice. So 1 and 2 is kind of normal voice. Doesn't have to be, you know, deep or sharp or anything. It's just kind of normal. But on number 3, we get, oh, super. Yeah? So that's all I want you to do. Remember, you don't say the next number until your puppy looks at you. So stand up and off we go. Okay, sorry.
My computer's dying, so I'm just trying to get logged on to a different computer.
Yeah, it's all right.
Just take 2 minutes.
I can see you at the moment if you want to practice anyway.
Okay.
Wow.
So the aim of the game is that the puppy finds out that looking at you and paying attention to you is a really good idea. So Nikki, your puppy's a bit mixed up because she can see a pile of food. Every time you bend down, that handful of other food comes into view, and she's thinking that that's the thing that she's meant to focus on. Now she thinks she needs to focus on it because it's there. So what we have is a dog who's really good at seeing the value of things and measuring the value of things. And she's measured that there's more value in that big pot than there is in your hand. So wait for it to look back up again. And there, you say your next number and you start to go down with your food. Beautiful. So I'm just going to wait for her to get herself back in again if I carry on. So you can carry on with that bit. She's so cute. So what you should see when you say your 3 with your slightly raised happy voice, you should see the dog sort of go smiley and their tail their body sort of liven up and their energy increase. And she says, I'm just looking out the garden. Does she want to go out? Is she just doing that thing that puppies do where they constantly ask so they can check the garden for no reason whatsoever? You're on mute, babe.
Dad's on. Yeah.
Hello.
Now, Dad's sitting on the other side because he wants to come and join in. That's what. There, you can lie down.
Okay, so what I'll do, oh, Claire's back.
Bobby, clever, really good girl.
You back?
Hey! No, not you.
So what you should start to see is you should start to see your puppy get excited and quicker. Should start to see them get excited, and you should start to see them be quicker to return their attention back to your face after they've eaten. Yeah? So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to tell them that you need to maintain that interest in me even when I'm moving. Okay, so this time we're going to do the 1, 2, 3 game, but on the third, we're going to move slightly. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3. So did you see I moved, he moved, and he was trying to get my eye contact, and I said 3 when he was moving and looking at me. Does that make sense? So we're only going 1 step. We're not going far. We stay still for the first 2. So we go 1, 2, 3. Does that make sense? Okay, beautiful. So, what we need is to know in our minds that even if to begin with the puppy's a little bit slow to cotton on that they need to follow, and it's important that you don't move far, it's literally one step. Even if they don't sort of get that they're supposed to come to you straight away, they will eventually put 2 and 2 together because the food is always going to be right next to your feet. Yeah, you're not tossing it to them. Is everybody fairly happy with that bit so far if we move on? Yeah, thumbs up so I can tell because I'm happy. Yeah, grand. All right, so we've got 1, 2, 3 is a way of getting the puppy to understand. Keep watching me because you never know what I'm going to do. Now we're going to do another little game that does a similar job. So this time we're going to go step, find it. Okay, so I go step, find it. Find it. Find it. Now the treats are still going close to my feet. I'm not tossing them away. They are skittering away because of this floor, but the aim is for them to be quite close to your feet. So we're going to move first, find it, and then bend. Move, find it. Find it. Now what you should see, and I'll just do a test on him, what you should see is they start to move before you've said find it and before you've bent down to put the food. Okay, because they're starting to want to stick with you. So you move, yeah, and they should be wanting to move with you because they don't know whether or not you can find it. Does that make sense? So we're trying to get them excited about the idea that there might be a little bit of food. Okay, now, if your dog is not that excited by the food, then you might find that you need to try different food. If your dog is more of a toy kind of a dog, person that likes toys, you can do similar, but it takes a bit longer because you've got to get the toy back after you've done each toy reward or play reward, but you can use that instead. So play with it. Play with the idea of would a different type of food work better? And mix and match the games. So with the 1, 2, 3, sometimes you're doing it standing still. Sometimes you're stepping away 1 step. Sometimes you're going to go away a couple of steps. With the find it game, you're going to start with every time you move away, there's a little find it, and then you can start adding steps away. And the aim is eventually for the dog to be wanting to keep track of you and wanting to move with you all of the time. Does that make sense? So you get to the point eventually with these games where even when you haven't got food in your hands, even when you're just moving around, and to be honest, sometimes in the house this becomes a little bit annoying, your dog just wants to track wherever you are. Yeah? But when you go out into the wild, that's a nice thing to have because your dog's keeping an eye on you. If you remember that your dog is always going to be the faster person out of your relationship, they're always going to be the one who, you're not going to be able to catch them if they decide to step away from you. So getting them really keen to follow you and hang out with you and to watch what you're doing and to pay attention to you, that keeps them a lot safer. Okay? So another little game we can play is just called Find the Feet. So it's very similar idea. We move, but we're going to pick a foot and the side of a foot. So I'm going to nominate for this particular training session for Dodo, we're going to go with my right foot, and that means I'm going to be delivering to the outside of my right foot. You can get that. You can get it. Get it. I think we're doing a different exercise. So then I'm going to move randomly and I'm going to deliver to the outside of my right foot. You pick whichever foot you like, but keep the same foot. All right, so I move, and if he's tracking with me, I'm going to just drop a piece of food right next to that foot. I'm not worried about where he is, how his body is in relation to my foot at this point. I'm literally saying, if you can follow that foot, there will be food right next to it. Does that make sense? So we're going to move the feet, and even if he's facing me, it still goes next to my right foot. If he happens to be facing in the same direction as me, it's going to be next to my right foot. It's random, but it's always the same place next to your foot. So it doesn't matter which foot you choose. You can choose the left, but stick with the left for that training session. I like to train my dogs to work on both sides of me. You know, I wouldn't want to, if I was a dog, I wouldn't want to have to always walk on the same side of a person, because I think I would probably get a stiff neck if I was trying to keep an eye on them, if I stayed on the same side all of the time. So I like to teach them both sides. And especially if you're planning on doing anything like agility later on, then working both sides is a very good idea. When you're doing things like obedience, they're going to ask you to specifically work on the left side, you know, but I like a dog that's balanced and can work on both. All right. So once your puppy's really clever at that one, there's another game which you've already kind of started. It's a game called touch. Okay. So move, yes, and reward. All we're going to change with regards to teaching them to walk with us is we're going to be very specific about where the reward comes afterwards. So for this one, I'll choose left side. And what we're going to do is we're going to move, yes. And if he touches, I'm going to give my marker word the yes, yeah. And then I'm going to reward from the same hand close to my body. So I move, yes, and then the food is going to come. So what I've got is I've got a stash either in my training pouch or in my hand, and the stash is still. And the touch hand, yes. Then I swap a piece of food into that hand and I reward right next to my body. Yeah, so I move, yes, and then I swap and reward. And again, a little bit difficult to see in this space maybe, but we do a touch, yes, and we're going to reward with the same hand that we did that touch with. Okay, and you can get fancy with that. If your dog's really good at touch, you can start being a bit specific. You can start saying when my hand is right next to my body, so it's my hand is in contact with my body. If you can follow it and touch it, yes, then I will get you a treat. And I dropped that one. That was an accident. Okay, so what we do then, we mix it all up to keep the puppy interested, because if we do the same thing over and over and over, just like we get bored, they get bored. So what we're going to do is we're going to add them all together in whatever order you like. So sometimes we're going to be move and find the feet. Sometimes we're going to be move and then stand still. 1, 2, 3. sometimes it's the counting game, sometimes it's the touch. Yes. Yep. Anything, can you see then what you get is a dog who doesn't want to take their eyes off you, wants to be involved with you, thinks it's a really good game. Now then, where it all falls apart, for most people, where it all falls apart is when you put the lead on. Because most people don't spend the time getting the dog used to the sensation of the lead. Okay, so the lead almost comes right from tiny puppyhood, comes with these negative associations, these feelings of being uncomfortable. If you think about when you first put a lead on a puppy, quite often they will fight against it. And if we don't do a lot of work to help them feel relaxed about the lead, then that feeling is going to then be taken out into wherever they're walking, whatever else they're experiencing. So with your tiny puppies, we're going to play a little game, which is all those games we've just done, but they're going to just be trailing a lead around. It's just attached. I'm not going to touch it, but I'm going to play the same games. Does that make sense? So you maybe need, to be honest, to begin with, maybe a short bit of lead, an old lead or something, so that it's not getting too tangled around them or you're not tripping over it. But any lead will do. And it's just so that they can start to feel that sometimes there's this thing dragging on me. And you need to do the same with the harness as well. If they're wearing a harness, have them play these games, first of all inside the house, then in the garden, and then take those games out on the road when the dog's already comfortable with the idea of having that lead attached, and it changes the whole sensation of their body. Yes, find it. Find it. So a lot of puppies get stroppy when you're trying to mess with their necks. They get all mixed up. So one of the best ways of dealing with that is just to scatter a bit of food on the floor, so that then you've got two loose hands without trying to mess about. While they're putting their head down to pick up the treats, you can be clicking that harness on without them getting all stressy, or putting the collar on without them being stressy. Okay, so once you've got your puppy nice and relaxed and they're just following you, and the lead becomes a nothing, that is something that they're not even paying attention to because they're busy playing the game with you, then you're going to start playing a slightly different game. What you're going to do is you're going to reach towards them as if you're going to take hold of the lead, but you're not actually going to take hold of the lead. Yes, and you're going to drop a piece of food. So we're going to reach, yes, and drop a piece of food. Okay, so reach, yes, and drop a piece of food. And I want you to, it's pretending. So one hand's the reacher, as if we're going to go and grab the lead. The other one is the rewarder, so the dog is moving away from the lead. Don't worry if they're chewing. It's another reason why you use an old lead rather than one that you kind of attach to. Eventually, slowly, eventually, take hold of the lead a little bit and play with it. Don't pull on it, just play with it so it makes some chinky noises, and then reward. When your puppy's really comfortable and they're not really paying attention to the fact that you picked the lead up, because they're expecting that next piece of food. Yeah, when you've got them to that point where they're really not paying attention to the lead, pick it up and give a little tug on it, and then drop that piece of food and drop the lead. Little tug, give your piece of food, then drop the lead. If your puppy's comfortable with all of that, so you can reach in without them trying to grab the lead, you can give it a tug, and you can give that treat. Now we can start to move with the lead in our hand. And we're going to play the same games that we were playing before. Yeah? So what you should see now, instead of if you had a puppy before who was tending to pull on the lead, with these games now, you should be seeing a puppy who wants to be with you, even though they're on a lead, and isn't getting upset by the lead. So they're wanting to follow you. They're wanting to keep with you. All right, so that's called desensitization for the lead. We want the puppy to forget that the lead's there, so it becomes a nothing, and we want them to want to follow us, to want to be near us. Okay? Obviously, you can take that all the way to advanced stuff, where you're going to have them knowing that they have to keep with you and keep watching you and keep moving with you in order to get a reward. All right, but that's later on. First parts are get them comfortable with the equipment so that they're ignoring the lead. It's not a big deal. If they keep grabbing at it and pulling at it, it's because it's uncomfortable or it's too interesting. We want to ignore all of that and say to them, oh, look, if I pretend I'm going to touch it, or if I actually touch it, don't worry about it. That's it, just wait for it to drop it. Carry on your games, as if she's doing nothing with the lead. Carry on the games, ignore the lead stuff. The lead stuff will disappear as she comes back into those little connection games, those little follow me games. Okay, beautiful. Any questions with any of that? Or does it all make sense, or are you mixed up with it, or come and tell me what you think? Oh. Go on then, Claire, since you're back sooner.
Yeah, that all makes sense. Yes, she did really well with that.
Yeah. She looked like she was wanting to follow you. You seem to be having difficulty getting away from her.
Yeah.
That's the most important part.
Right.
Okay. And how's Nikki getting on?
It's the first time she's ever had a lead on. Oh. So I think she's doing really well, to be fair.
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't know that. I could see that she was struggling a bit and getting excited by the lead a bit. So you can see where that desensitization game would come in there. Yeah. The more we try to grab at it or try and take it off, the more that they become excited by it, the more that they think it's something to pay attention to. So we need to, you know, have an old lead, something that you don't care about, that you can practice with, and putting it on, getting them used to these different sensations, the sensation of wearing the collar, the sensation of wearing the harness, the sensation of the lead pulling and dragging on the harness or the collar when they're just trying to move loosely without you holding the lead, allowing you to pick it up. Because if you think about it, quite often the objects that we have in our hands around our dogs are things like toys, and we're asking them to play and interact with those toys in our hands. From the dog's point of view, how do they know it's different? How do they know it's not a tug toy? Well, the thing is, if they do get hold of it in the first stages, we're not going to be keeping hold of it anyway. We're just going to be dropping it. So if they do grab at it, no big deal, because we're going to let it go. And what they're going to be starting to do is focus on staying with us anyway. And when we start doing the lead training where we're taking hold of the lead before we give them a piece of food, they're going to change their expectation from play to eat. Yeah. So they're not thinking grab it and hold it. They're thinking, ooh, where's the food? And, you know, I mean, I do, as I say, one-to-one with grown-up dogs who are already very, very pulley. And just having those things in your mind, first of all, your feet don't work if the dog applies pressure to the lead. You know, if the dog is pulling to get to the next whatever it is, and we step forward, then what happens is the dog figures out that pulling makes you go towards the things that they want. So your legs just stop and you just get a bit boring. And then as soon as they look at you, it's the 1, 2, 3 game, or the find it game, or the, you know, we're just gonna make it fun to hang out with us. Find the feet game, make it exciting, make it so that, yeah. And then when you are doing where you just want to wander and let them sniff, change your body language. Have your hand, instead of your hands being on your belly to say, walk with me, stay with me, have your arm extended and nice and loose and floppy so that they can sniff. But the same rule applies. If the lead goes tight, I can't move. You know, we don't get angry or upset about it. We don't try and force them to move. We just say, oh dear, you know, I really wanted to go and sniff that bush with you, but unfortunately the lead's gone tight and I can't move. You know, oh, so it's such a shame, puppy, because I was really excited about going there with you as well, you know, and it really works. They really get it. Okay, so I've lost track of time and I haven't got a clock to look at. Where are we? Woo, it's like 1 minute to go. So actually I've done really well with my timing there. So what I was going to say, going right back to the beginning, teaching down. When I was teaching Twiggy to go down, I honestly thought she'd never get there. Never. You know, there was a point at which I thought this dog she's just not going to be able to do it. And in the end, she, as you say, with Nikki, with your dog, it's not that she doesn't understand, it's just that it's uncomfortable or it's difficult. And in the end, Twiggy figured out to do a down. She couldn't do what I was trying to train her to do, which was to go straight down backwards. She has to put a front end down and then fold her back end in, you know, and I was basically asking her to do something she couldn't do, and you know, there wasn't that communication between us at the time. And every dog learns slightly differently and takes longer to learn some things than others. So it wouldn't be panicking me at all. What I would focus on rather than teaching it down is teaching the settle. So settle as in when I'm sitting still, you just go and park your bum wherever you like. You can sit to do it, you can lay down to do it, you can lay on your side if you like. I would focus more on the settle and less about teaching a cued down as such until she really starts to show you what makes sense to her. All right, hello, who's that? So what I would say, Claire, is do remember that this will potentially be on public view at some point in the future. Okay. Yeah, and you've got a little person and the camera.
Right, okay.
So we have to. Okay, so yeah, like which is, I mean, it's fine. She's fully clothed and whatever, but you know what it's like nowadays. It's just, oh, madness.
Yeah.
So for now, I said we wouldn't be sharing it with anybody that's outside of class, but then obviously the class do have.
Hi.
It's all madness.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm going to say if you've got any problems or queries, any concerns? What I have to say about lead work and lead walking is it is absolutely the hardest thing, because we get frustrated. We lose our rag with our dogs, because as soon as we start trying to do it in distracting environments, it falls apart a little bit. So when you've got a puppy who's following you around perfectly in the living room and in the garden, be aware that as soon as you take them out, it's going to be much harder for them. So we need those focus games to be really, really fun and really interesting. And we need to have, as much as possible, the environment that you're doing it in to be, to begin with, quite a low intensity environment. So when I start teaching lead walking to my puppies, I will be in the middle of a field. You know, anything that's interesting is a big distance in the periphery to begin with. And once they're starting to really understand and focus, then we'll do kind of wander towards the busy stuff. And if the puppy starts to find that difficult, we wander away from the busy stuff to continue practicing. So that eventually walking on the lead through busy environments becomes kind of normal, and it's not, we're not putting them into a situation where they're not able to offer the behavior that we prefer. Does that make sense? But you know, real life does mean that sometimes you're going to take them into situations that are a bit too hard. Please be aware, at no point is your puppy, they don't consider your feelings in their responses. So if your puppy is jumping up, biting at the lead, barking at you, trying to run away, trying to pull away, they're all giving you information that your dog is not coping in that situation. They're not dealing well with it, and you need to get them out of there. Don't try and force them to offer behavior. Don't get into that human nag mode where we're just saying you will, you will, you will, because you're going to do so much damage down the line. Slowly catch your monkey, basically, with leads, you know, build their confidence, get them to really want to hang out with you. Think of it as a real friendship issue. I always imagine if I was going to, so for example, my favorite, one of my favorite places is going to be an art gallery, and I'm thinking of the big ones in London. And, you know, I'd quite like to hang out for quite a long time and look at certain artists. But if I was there with a person who didn't like the artist that I wanted to spend a lot of time with, and just kept literally taking my hand and making me move onto whatever artist they prefer to see, or, you know, even out of the gallery because they're not really an art fan, I wouldn't want to go there with them again. And yet that's what we do with our dogs. Your dog is busy reading all of his P-mails and taking in all of that information from the environment, and we keep dragging them away from it and forcing them to move on. When you're with a puppy, what you need to think is, we're not actually going for a walk. We're going to check out the world and make all these memories of what's normal in the world. And every time the pup chooses you, you need to get all excited and big them up and then move with them to the next thing. Yeah? But if they're not choosing you, don't drag them on. Don't move them on. So they did a study, it's a Lincoln study, on how long a dog who was allowed to sniff and just take his time about sniffing, how long on average a dog would do that for, you know, for each individual separate sniffing session. And shocking results. In comparison with how long the average dog owner allowed their dog to sniff each individual sniff. Yeah. So the average dog owner moved their dog on after 4 seconds of sniffing. Yeah. 4 seconds on one particular spot. The average dog wanted 20 to 30 seconds at each spot. So imagine yourself in that art gallery or whatever it is that switches on your buttons, having the best time ever, and somebody says to you, you're only allowed 4 seconds for each painting or each whatever it is that you're excited by. You know, how annoying is that going to be when you can't just take it all in? Anyway, so there's a nag. I do get into nag mode. All right. So next week we're going to talk about, we're going to take it on a little bit further to how to engage a bit more when they're a bit more loose with you outside in the real world. So, all right. And we all happy? Yeah? Happy, happy. So wavy byesies. See you later.